And Slack is absent this evening. Great, thank you very, very much. We always want to thank Grassroots TV for being here and for broadcasting our meetings live. If you cannot sleep at night, you can also go to grassrootstv.org and watch our meetings replayed. That would be good fun for you. Our videographers tonight are Ryan O'Donnell and Amy Gobb.
Woo.
Oh, good, okay. We've got a room full of Ryans again. God.
We're missing a Ryan.
We are missing.
We're
We
down
could have
one.
three. We could have had three. And there's mayor's coffee tomorrow at Starbucks at 8 o'clock in the morning. If you come, I'll buy you coffee. If you come to talk to me, that is. And Brian is there sometimes. Sometimes the police chief is there. So, let's start with our consent agenda. It's got a few things on it. Are there any questions on the consent agenda, or is there a motion? That's so quiet.
I have a question.
Okay.
About the pension plan and trust. Is this something that the town already has?
Yeah. We're taking the previous finance director off and getting the new finance director added onto it. And it took some time because the company actually required having the old finance director give permission for that change.
Sure.
And we were like, well, they're not here, so how do we deal with that? And so that's why it's a little delayed, but so we're here. So it's business as usual. It's just getting the new people on board.
Thank you so much for explaining. And I move that the town council approve the consent agenda items as presented. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great, thank you very much. Okay, let's get rid of all these piles. Our next item is public comment for items that are not on the agenda. If there's anybody here that has comment for information for items that are not on the agenda, please come up to the microphone and introduce yourself and give us your, we limit it to 3 minutes, but I'm sure that's hard to go 3 minutes, so go ahead. Oh, wait a minute, she has to, her phone's new, so she has to figure out her timer. I know that's what she's doing, so I'm gonna stall for just a little bit.
If you want to, if you'd be more comfortable sitting there, you can do that too.
sit and then,
No, you don't have to sit. You can stand. No, sit.
Okay.
Do whatever you like. I know.
We're ready.
Hi, my name is Romina Chisholm. I'm with the Valley Settlement. We wanted to take this opportunity to thank you for your support with our immigrant engagement programs, the Parent Mentor, and the Lifelong Learning programs. These programs are really helping our Latino community in the Valley, and I can speak from experience that these programs are really helping with involvement with the community and the schools. I came from Peru 5 years ago, and I was in the Parent Mentor program at Basalt Elementary, and then I was hired by Valley Settlement as the assistant director. And then because of the great experience I had, I decided to become a teacher myself. So I am currently student teaching at Basalt Elementary, and it's been a great experience.
Yay, thank you for doing that.
And there is a lot of other people who have also benefited from these programs and are working with our community now. So thank you so much.
Thank you for acknowledging us. Anybody else for comments not on the agenda? Okey dokey. The mayor and council reports and comments. Anybody? Jennifer?
Let's do our theme song. Basalt is an inclusive, sustainable mountain community that boasts both historic charm and progressive vision. It is an engaging place to live, work, and play while offering an abundance of creative, professional, educational, and recreational outlets.
Thank you, and I hope you will write the music for that tune next time you are here.
Ryan, will you accompany me on the xylophone?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
The old xylophone player,
Yeah,
Ryan.
Or the tambourine, whatever you choose.
I like the triangle.
Oh, okay.
Okay, other council comments, reports, anything interesting or extremely boring would be fine too. Let's see, Ryan's always got something for us.
You know, I'm afraid I'm at a loss for words this evening. Because I wasn't here last week and was out for the holiday, I don't have any new information for you. I've been playing catch-up this week, so.
Excellent. Well, this meeting's getting shorter by the
Stay
second.
tuned for the next meeting. I'll have abundance of items for you.
All right, that's fine. You can double up on us. All right, then, our next item is presentations from some of our citizen groups. And our first one, and I wonder if they're even here, Basalt Child Care Coalition.
Just walking in.
Is Sarah here to introduce?
Okay, come on up, Shirley. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, we're moving.
Take your coat off, but stay on.
This is not Pitkin County, you know. We just do it.
Thank you, thank you. Sorry, one second to write down the notes. You did that. Slide notes. So
Thank you.
These are
Yep,
you.
I had them too, but this is great. We can share.
Fantastic. Hi, I'm Sarah Nadolny with the Town's Planning Department. I have Shirley Ritter, newly arrived, who is a coalition member and with Kids First in City of Aspen and Pitkin County. I also just want to kind of reintroduce, I didn't get to meet you earlier, I'm sorry, but this is Romina Chisholm, and she's with Valley Settlement. Valley Settlement is an important partner in support of the coalition, and she's going to be here to also give any, feedback or questions that you, council, may have afterwards. So I apologize for the low representation. We do have a very big, diverse group, as Councilor Tannenbaum knows. We did have a lot of folks that were unavailable to be here tonight. A lot of sickness is going around, unfortunately, and a lot of folks that had to tend to their own children at home
yeah.
today. Yeah, children, which is really why we're here.
Oh, Sarah, could I interrupt you just a second?
Yeah.
Could you or somebody over here just sort of give the overall pre-information about what all these are geared towards, these presentations?
Sure, absolutely. I can jump in and maybe Susan can fill in where I have some gaps. But the idea tonight was to get, to start with 3 of our committees and get those in front of council. The idea at the next meeting would be to have a few more and kind of split them among 2 meetings just because there's a number of them. And it was really to start an engagement process with the council again. At our retreat, we had talked a little bit about how to better engage with our committees. And the idea and the ideal starting point for that engagement really starts probably mid-year, when we start talking about the budget and committees and the council can engage and talk about new ideas and things that they want to work on, and council can offer direction. We're starting, of course, our retreat was in August, so we're sort of starting midterm, if you will, with the normal annual cycle we'd like to. But this at least gave us an opportunity to get our committees in front of council. I think some of the council has, new faces, but then we also have new faces on the committee. So that way you guys can just have a brief chat about what we know is coming up for the next year based on some of our budgeted items, and get sort of an initial introduction. And so we intend to bring the committees back throughout the year and give updates, but this at least gives us sort of that starting point based on our conversation between council and myself back in August.
Okay. I thought the format was good, that it said kind of what they did this year and what the plan is for 2019. That gives us something to start with. Okay, I just wanted to make sure I wasn't
Did I get
missing something.
Everything right? Yeah.
All right.
Great.
Great. Okay,
All right, so I'm just going to reintroduce as the Early Childhood Coalition, formerly known as the Child Care Coalition. It was formed in about 2007, and it was formed to address the needs of child care for those that live and work within the Basalt area. So Child Care Coalition members include representatives from local and county governments. We do have councilors Tannenbaum and Slack on the coalition. Local child care providers, educators, nonprofits, business community representatives, and health services. So it's kind of a loose and very diverse coalition of people. And the mission of the coalition is to promote quality, capacity, and accessibility to early childhood programs. And over time, it's been expanded to look at the whole child and includes educational and health opportunities for families of young children. So today, as Mayor Whitsitt, you've described, we're here to talk about the 2018 successes and 2019 requests, as well as some partnerships. So before I hand it over to Shirley, I just want to call council's attention to two items. In staff's memo, page 3 of staff's memo, there's a small boo-boo. So I just want to let you know that it says $75,000 for tuition assistance. It should say $60,000, so I apologize about that. I also wanted to call your attention to 4 letters of appreciation that are part of staff's memo as well. And those are written by families who are recipients of tuition assistance, specifically with the Basalt funding. And I think they're very impactful. So I will hand it over to Shirley to kick it off.
I'll let you have the clicker, though. You can
Thanks.
drive. I think additionally, Sarah, I just wanted to mention that we also have generally a county commissioner from Pitkin and often from Eagle also represented in the coalition. So that's really helpful and gives a little broader insight. I think one of the things that I know you've always been interested in are the partners that we have in some of the funding that goes on. And as Sarah said, this has really helped address more than just the financial aid or the capacity, some of those things that we've been working on for a while. It really broadens the scope of what this group is able to do with additional funding. One of the things that we know about supporting the whole child is that it's always a 2-generational approach. It really affects the families and the children at the same time. One of the things that we've also worked in partnership, so CPP gets funding for a certain group of children through the school district, at-risk 4-year-olds typically. CCAP serves children. Our position has always been that cost of childcare is the highest for the families that are the neediest and the most at risk. So that's one of the areas that we've always wanted to be able to address. Childcare quality, child health. Last year, we used funding from Eagle County to collect data and to look at needs around child health. And because of that, it's moved into a request to Eagle County this year to do screenings on all the children in the area, whether they attend childcare or not, for vision, dental, hearing, and also developmental screening. So that's going to be a great step, starting with very, very young children. Continued planning for much-needed additional capacity for childcare, outreach for children not enrolled in licensed childcare, cultural competency efforts to address Latino leadership, and public engagement efforts, working with the Community Foundation and with Eagle County. In 2018, those groups together did polling across all of Eagle County and Western Eagle County specifically to assess the possibility of a ballot initiative for early childhood. The results of that are indicating another 2 years of public engagement in order to really bring that information to the community and broaden the base of who those spokespeople might be and who needs to know that message. So 2018 highlights, most of these you're really familiar with, but what you see up here on the screen are the dollar amounts from the town of Basalt for tuition assistance, for capacity planning, and quality improvement. And the memo gave you quite a lot of information about that. I know that you have some questions about the tuition assistance, and really briefly, I can tell you that what was offered with town of Basalt money looked like 2 slightly different models. One was using the CPP guidelines. So again, for 4-year-olds, but children who are probably on the wait list because they always have a wait list. There aren't enough spaces with that state funding. And that really looks at factors in learning delays. For example, English language learners, it could be substance abuse in the family, mental health issues in the family, abusive adult living in the home, incarceration, teen parent, homeless, and folks who get free and reduced lunch. Those kind of factors, not necessarily child development factors, but those things that are a factor in how successful that child is going to be in the future. So we look at providing some financial assistance to those children who just really need to be in a child care program the year that they're 4 years old. And then the other part of the financial aid is geared on financial need. So we have a calculator set up in Excel that looks at the maximum income for where CCAP ends, where their funding stops. In any county you look at, there is typically what you call a cliff effect, where as soon as you make $1 an hour over that maximum amount, you don't get any help from CCAP anymore. So this starts where that ends, and it looks at the family income, the cost of childcare, the number of children that are in childcare, and it determines a percentage that the family is able to pay. So if any of you filled out the FAFSA form for yourself or for kids for college, it looks a lot like that and identifies that gap in what's affordable. So those are the two models that we've used for the past few years. We are looking at revising that slightly and considering how we can still be fair and equitable, but probably gear it down just a little bit because there's always more need than there is money. Sad but true. Okay, I'll just keep talking. So, gearing up for 2019 planning, again, this shows you what that request and what the total looks like. We talked a little bit about the tuition assistance and the plans to revise the guidelines. We know that it's costly for many working families, but we really want to target this for the folks who most need it. If we had a lot more money, we'd love to help more people, but that's just not the case, and it's probably not going to be. In 2019, this program will be administered by the Early Childhood Network. We've had some conversations at coalition meetings. It had been the last 2 years administered by the Community Foundation staff. Before that, we did it at Kids First when it first started. The foundation really felt like it wasn't a good role for them. It wasn't primarily what they were doing. So Early Childhood Network has stepped up, and they are actually involved in a higher level in a lot of these activities. The capacity planning really focuses on continuing the momentum that we have started with new spaces focused on Parcel 2E, also refining plans and hopefully moving into capital fundraising. We also really want to make sure that we keep an eye on not losing any of the spaces that we currently have, because we have to do that at the same time. We have to make sure we don't lose those at the same time we're planning for more capacity. It's always a little bit of a tenuous situation. Quality improvement involves classroom goals with measurable outcomes. What this funding will do will be provide an incentive to early childhood staff who successfully complete their quality improvement goal. The coaching, which is money that is requested from Eagle County, will also work to support those teachers and those goals. This is a voluntary program, and it directs funding to those frontline staff who really make a difference for the children and for the families using care. And finally, the public engagement includes activities that really engage a broader community. It will share information from the family perspective, the business perspective, and again, work together with, Eagle County is obviously doing this throughout the county, so we want to work together with them and with the Community Foundation to make the most of that.
So I'll talk a little bit about Eagle County funding requests. Eagle County has been providing funding for the coalition over the past couple of years. This year they did change the way that the coalition was asked to do a funding request through an RFP process. And so we did respond to that, and we are asking for the amount of $200,000 from Eagle County for the 6 listed initiatives. The first 4, tuition assistance, quality improvement, public engagement, and capacity planning, are all matched requests with Town of Basalt funding. So we're looking for an equal partnership with those initiatives. And then coaching and health are also initiatives that we're requesting specifically for Eagle County. So their initiatives come from the Eagle County Childhood Roadmap, which focuses on the whole child again, with the intent of achieving the objectives of creating a thriving community for families and a great place to live for all. And so those are goals that Eagle County is working hard towards. According to the RFP addendum, the coalition does expect to receive notification of funding from Eagle County on December 14th, which is after the second reading of our budget. So we won't quite know until after, unfortunately. So with that, we just want to wrap it up. Thank you for listening and for your time. If we could answer any questions or get any direction, we would really appreciate that. Thank you.
I just wanted to say your information is great. This is clearly a really mature group that has their plans figured out to some extent. Well, more so than my plans are usually figured out. But I just wanted to point out to council that this is not actually a normal, it's not a Basalt citizen advisory type group. This was created outside of the town of Basalt and is staffed by who? No, there's no staff?
I
No,
would say
the
Sarah
town-
and Susan.
Yeah.
So the town does
Yeah,
staff?
yeah.
it? Okay.
Yep.
And how are the appointments made to that group?
Well, that's one of the things that we have had on the agenda to work on, is to figure out how those appointments are made and what that representation looks like, to make it a more official commission or childcare group, whatever that looks like. Some of the discussion has been around representation clearly from the town of Basalt, also from Eagle County and possibly Pitkin County, which of course makes it a little bit more complicated when you have multiple jurisdictions involved.
Yeah,
But
it's like the
that's a
library
goal.
sort of. Yeah, Susan.
Well, I just wanted to add that we actually did a draft of an IGA about creating a Basalt Child Care Coalition, and last year we had meetings with Eagle County and Pitkin County in terms of advancing child care, and particularly Commissioner McQueenie kind of wanted to hold off on right now establishing kind of the formal IGA and wanted to have a more citizen-based input and get a larger group at the table. And that was one of the reasons that we were kind of moving forward with this kind of additional citizen participation effort to see there's different ways of doing that, and they just kind of, the direction at that time, which we can revisit, was that we needed a bigger community discussion about childcare before we formalized a group.
Okay. Well, we could talk about that more, but we have a couple other groups coming in front of us. Is Pitkin County a funding partner at this point?
Only in terms of CCAP funding for those low-income families at this point.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what's the total budget of this program right now?
Well, and you know, that was an addition. There's also requests being made to Eagle County from Valley Settlement and from Roaring Fork School District that are in addition to this, but we didn't have the exact amount, so we didn't add them out there.
Yeah, what was your 2018 budget?
So our 2018 budget total was
The program.
From the town or from,
The program.
from the town and
No,
from
no,
Eagle
there-
County?
This is a program that runs, I
I
just
think it
wanna
was
know what
180.
So
Last
75
year.
from us and
200?
much from
Was it
Eagle?
200 last year?
180?
180,
Yeah,
so from Eagle
close.
County.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, good to know.
And you know, the other thing too from Eagle County, sorry, is that they have started a couple programs last year just on the Eagle River Valley side that had to do with salary supplements and infant toddler subsidy and a recruitment bonus. And they are expanding that to all of Eagle County, so that will also benefit the programs and folks over here. It's gonna be a big help.
Jen?
Sure. So I was reading that the that the compensation in 2018 for administration was $7,500, and that was for Aspen Community Foundation. Now that it's going to the network, what is that amount for administration?
We've had discussion that would be, it would be a 10% of whatever is granted for the
But it
tuition
would
assistance.
not be an addition, it would be part of that
Part of
level.
that money.
So at a maximum 6,000?
Like that 6,200 probably, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And then I had the same question as Jackie of where's Pitkin County? And would love to invite them to join in this wonderful venture. And then as well, can you tell me about the eligibility? I was reading that the income maximum, you described a much more in-depth equation. What it mentioned in the packet was an income maximum of 165% or less of FPL, federal poverty level.
So CCAP levels vary by county. Right now, Pitkin is at 185% of federal poverty level. Eagle is at 225, but there's some changes happening at the state level that may dictate what counties do. Not yet decided. Above that, counties could fund, but they would have to fund that with their own local funds. So I don't know where that's going to go either. So this, the financial aid, the funding from the town of Basalt and the money requested from Eagle County would start with families who are just above that. So they might be at 192% or 230, you know, depending on what county they live in. So they wouldn't qualify for CCAP, but we would use that information, their income, their cost for childcare, to determine whether they qualified and how much they might qualify for out of this funding.
So those families, mothers with fussy toddlers in front of the television right now, trying to put them to sleep by watching a meeting, can you give them an idea of a household of 3 to 5 people? What is that income or that yearly or monthly income?
You know, I would be happy to send you that calculator and you can play around with it and put numbers in there a little bit. It's kind of hard to say because it does depend on how many children are in childcare and how many days a week they go. But I've seen everything from $5 a day per child if their income is relatively high to $40 a day per child if they are just above that cutoff. So it changes a lot depending on what their income is and what that cost for childcare. I mean, you know, for one child in childcare for full-time for a year is about $18,000. If you have 2, obviously it's twice that. So that's a big cost for families, and it translates to a fairly big cost in tuition assistance. But that's what we're trying to weigh, is the need and whether there's a maximum amount that we can afford to give or what that looks like. There are different models across the country that look at that differently. We've used the calculator. Honestly, it started with Kids First, and we developed it because it was equitable. Some of the other things that we saw really looked just at income, but it didn't look at how much you paid for childcare or how many kids you had, and so that it wasn't really fair and equitable. So it's a work in progress. I would be happy to share it with you and get some feedback.
I'm just curious of
Yeah.
looking at it from the housing numbers and researching what the federal poverty level is.
Right.
And what it is for Pitkin County versus Eagle County, and it's a complex equation.
Mm-hmm.
And just to ensure that what is imperative to me of the equal sign is the families that financially, and it comes back to the definition of what is need. But just to ensure that our lowest income get the greatest amount of this tuition assistance.
You know, I think it is a complicated issue because we also don't have as much capacity as we need. I think if there were more capacity, we would also see greater need for financial aid from some of those families that right now can't even probably find a spot,
Right.
let alone pay for it. So it kind of all works together that way.
Well, and one piece of it too, sorry.
Sure.
One piece of it too, just being pat on that, is also trying to find a way to engage the Latino community in this, because obviously the need is great, but how do you engage them to show them where the capacity is and how much they can actually, you know, get out of this financial aid package? And that's been the challenge for the coalition since we started, was really trying to engage Latino community, because that's one of the things where there's a lot of need. There's not a lot of capacity to get them in, and then the financial aid has to be even greater to be able to make them even be able to afford it. So and that's why the Valley Settlement thing has been a really big piece of this whole puzzle. So it's, cause I played with that calculator, cause I wanted a number. It's like, if I make $110,000, do I qualify? And it just doesn't give you that answer. You have to like put in all this other stuff, so.
And do you have to have a W-2?
I'm sorry, do you have to,
To qualify, are these numbers from direct W-2s?
oh, yeah,
Okay.
right. There's both tax information, W-2s, and I forget what we call it. It's basically from the employer verification.
All right. Great, thank you. That's robust and it's important.
So, other questions or suggestions or anything regarding this? I guess my one thing that seems obvious is that this organization has become very strong over a very short time. I'm really impressed. And it also seems like it's taken on somewhat of a life of its own compared to our other citizen committees, like has other funders, and I'm wondering if there's a need to come up with a formal organization, whether it be a 501 or I don't know what, to take better advantage of, like, asking for grants from SKICO and the hospitals and the people whose employees are probably, their kids are here. So, I mean, no matter what the organization is, it's not clear to me what that organization or relationship to us is, or whether it's better growing its own wings. I mean, you would still have all of us funders, and it seems like to me you would have other funders, yeah.
You hit the point of how do we do that? And that's gotta be part of the thinking, because we have had meetings on that. We met with Jeannie McQueenie and Patty Clapper, and trying to find ways to formalize this coalition, but being able to do it in a way that can still, because the counties are the big funders and the towns are the big funders. So how we do this is gonna be interesting, and I think you hit a great point. It's the sticking point. I mean, I'm impressed with how well this coalition has worked. It has been amazing. I give you guys all a ton of credit, because you guys are pulling together this thing, and it's really just volunteering. And there's no reaching out. There's no, they just call a meeting and they get a ton of people together, and they have incredible experience to do this. You hit the next piece, because why aren't we hitting the Healthy Community Fund of Pickman County? Why aren't we hitting other pieces? Is because there's not a massively formal organization. We can't have our staff out there doing it. They got a ton of other things to do. So it's definitely gonna be something that we are gonna engage big time in 2019.
That's good, I think, because, I mean, it's super clear that this is not functioning like our committees, and, you know, where, because you're getting out there and you're funding yourselves, basically, like a department or a little company, so that's good. I mean, it means that you're still gonna be around in 10 years.
So is that, to turn that around, do most of the other formally appointed commissions, they're staffed by town staff, and they still represent different, well, community members, whether it's different organizations or not, right?
Well, the difference really is that we make the appointments, we ask them to do things, council asks them to do things, or we have a set, like, master plan for post, or, I mean, they all are very much a part of the town, and council makes the calls on what they do, and I don't think that's necessarily appropriate in the case of, this is more of it looks like a Mid-Valley sort of childcare. It's definitely started in the town. Anyway, if you're already looking at that, I think you should look at it more seriously, because I think that, I think it's very hard for grantors to give money to town governments. You know, we don't get money from anyone. So all I'm saying is it would be something you should look at, I think, in 2019. So, anybody else?
We've been a great incubator.
Yeah,
Yeah.
seriously.
Well, and I'll give you, on that note, Jeannie McQueenie, that's why she comes over here for these meetings. She comes to every single meeting, and it's impressive because they're either in the morning or in the middle of the day, and she's just blown away that we have been able to do this, and the rest of Eagle County is just starting to catch up. And so, and that's why she was worried that if you made it too formal, would you take away from this amazing group that's been able to do it? But it's, that you hit a great point, is that we've done it here, and I give credit to Susan and Sarah and Shirley, because they're pulling this together. Community Foundation just is like, I'm gonna help, we're gonna help you. So it's impressive, we're doing it here, Eagle County is following in the rest of the place, and that's why they're taking that out of their, they're taking, just like we are, out of our funds, just basically out of general funds. There's no special fund they're taking any of this money out of, they're just taking it out of their general fund
Right.
to fund childcare, so.
Well, anyway, you're doing great work. I think the structure just needs to be examined for what could it be.
Absolutely.
So,
Thank you, in case we didn't say that before, because it was really Town of Basalt funding for a lot of years that kept this group going and then eventually got more attention. So that's awesome.
it's a wonderful thing.
When we're
Yeah.
string of
Yeah.
spaghetti is for us policymakers to consider ballot initiatives to fund early childhood education. That was something that Eagle County really considered. They have a lot of framework behind it. They considered putting it on the early 2018 May ballot, but decided not to. But there is that possibility, just as we did for the cigarette tax. We can in turn create a funding source for this organization and work that other level, that next level of incubation.
That's part of that is the money for community engagement, because the polling is decent over here, but it's not good enough to get that thing passed. So we need to, people just don't know. Unless you have a kid who is in childcare or you're on town council and you're dealing with all the people,
Right.
it's really difficult for some people in the community to realize the need, so,
And for us to psych ourselves up.
it's like, yep,
Yeah.
exactly.
Anyway, thank you again for coming in. Good work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Somebody's doing a lot of work somewhere for all this. Yes.
And I just wanted to say that Rashina was here to show her support for the Childhood Coalition, but we didn't open it up for public comment, so.
I got that.
Got
Yeah, thank you. Okay, our next group is Parks, Open Space, and Trails. Susan?
If I could ask the post committee members to come on up and grab a chair and bring it up to the front counter, and once I get settled, I'll start talking.
Hello, again. Everybody? I think it's cold in here too.
So Glenn, come on, you guys can all
Get
kind
as
of
close as
gather.
you can
around.
to the desk, just so that you can share the mics a little bit more easily.
And Carol, why don't you just move this mic down, the one that's on. So, yeah. And I think we are going to have public comment on this one, but
Jeff, would you mind just moving that podium away from Carol? Thank you. Ah, there she is.
okay. So, this is a good representation of the Parks, Open Space, and Trails Committee. They are a committee that's appointed by the Basalt Town Council, and they typically have between 5 and 7 members. Right now, we have 6 members, and the only member who's missing is Jason Groves, who's had another commitment. So he wasn't able to come tonight, but I think you know everyone that's here: Julie Kolar, Glenn Drummond, Cindy Bruce, Paul Hilt, and Cindy Bruce. And
Carol Hawk. Sorry. There's two of you.
sorry. And as I said, Parks, Open Space, and Trails, it's pretty obvious what their mission is, and they were established because the town of Basalt does have a dedicated funding source for Parks, Open Space, and Trails. And you've seen their budget for 2019. It's included in the capital improvement plan, which James has put up on the board here. But I think it's really important to kind of note in the capital improvement plan for 2019 that the major capital items under that plan are really driven by Basalt Town Council policy. In other words, purchasing a portion of the Basalt River Park, and also the issue about paying off the debt on the Basalt underpass really came from the administration and the Basalt Finance Department, really after kind of a scrutiny that really to comply with the accounting records, we need to encumber those funds regardless, so that there isn't really a prudent reason that we shouldn't go ahead and pay it off. But that has a major impact on the capital improvement plan for 2019. The rest of the capital improvement plan really comes from projects that were in the 2013 Post master plan, and that master plan was prepared by Post, but under the town charter, it's actually approved as part of the master plan, so it was also approved by the town council and P&Z. So there are projects that were included in the Parks Master Plan, and there are also projects that were included in earlier versions of the capital improvement plan and kind of just carried forward. So what we thought we would do tonight is, I think one of our major goals is really not to get into the weeds, but to have Post kind of highlight of the whole list that we gave you on projects, the items that they're going to be working on in 2019. The other thing I just kind of wanted to inform you, if you didn't catch it on the formatting of kind of the project sheets that kind of followed in the packet, is the capital improvement plan on the left column had those references A, A2, A3, and those were kind of the project delineations, and those are kind of the same letters that were kind of carried through here. So we only included in the packet behind here the individual sheets that were on either the major capital improvements or on the other projects that were worthy of noting. So with that, I'm just going to turn it over to Julie Kolar, and then to describe the major projects that Post is working on.
Hi, Julie. As Susan mentioned, you got your long list. I think that when we were meeting this week, we decided that there were 5 standouts, and they're really things that we've been working on for some of them for quite some time, some of them more recently. A lot of what we have to do as a committee is sort of adjust.
If you just yell Mike, we will know what that means.
We do a lot of adjusting to what's going on and what the temperature is with the budgets, with changes, with, major park purchases, whatnot. We have to kind of ebb and flow with what we do, so we shift our focus from time to time. But in general, we try to stay the course with the grand list and prioritize accordingly. So as Susan mentioned, we really want to have enough time for you guys to ask us questions and to offer your input. But I'll just go quickly through our standouts. The main one probably that everyone's aware of is the River Park, and working with council to kick off the planning process for some of the initial improvements. And that relates to both Sopers Engineering, I believe, and Connect One landscape design firm. And basically, everything's sort of on order to get started with your blessings. So whatever we need to do there, we can begin that process. And that would be more the near-term type improvements that we can do quickly. The second thing is Albany Park, and I think you guys are all pretty aware that we've been working on ways to improve the pool specifically. There are some structural things, just basic integrity, and then there are also just some aesthetic kind of missing links that we would like to improve to make the whole thing better. In a nutshell, we're not looking to do massive regional award-winning stuff. This is really just to make it a much better pool for the community that uses it currently. We do have slated in the budget preparation of plans, and we've been working on a whole variety of preliminary planning to even look at the park as well as the pool. And what we want to do now is focus some actual construction efforts on the pool and get that going. So we've got some preliminary estimates to do that. The next is trails. We've been working so much on open space, parks, pretty much for the last decade straight, and haven't really been focusing on trails quite as much. So it's come up to reserve some money and start thinking about that. And to us, trails means anything from small connections that are within town, such as urban sidewalk connections, things that are disjointed, maybe particularly unsafe or not functioning properly, to actually bigger picture and maybe looking at recreational style trails, things that we can partner perhaps with counties on and other funding partners and effort doers like Mid-Valley Trails and whatnot. So kind of bumping that up in our purview as we've been ignoring it for quite some time. Policies and donations, I think it's kind of great timing to really get some kind of order so that we have a gracious and clear way to deal with donations, people that want to recognize loved ones, people that have passed on, what have you. I think that a lack of a policy is, it's starting to create lots of questions, and I think questions can lead to potential problems, and we kind of want to nip that in the bud and create something that's really great that might help solve for everything. So there's a catch-all, and there's a rationale and a rule so that everyone feels, well taken care of, and there's a good stream for that. And then finally, you guys are also aware of the park information signs in relation to the Roaring Fork Conservancy, and a generous donor that is really interested in doing some interpretive type communication. We've met with Rick LaForo a couple times and are just kind of honing in on what the best direction would be. Post does have a signage master plan, and we've encouraged the use of that so that it's consistent, materials-wise, it has a modern approach, and it's also going to be appropriate for river presence and more natural settings. So we're kind of in a holding pattern, just waiting to hear back from the donor, Andrick, and really interested in progressing that forward. And so it's really kind of a partnership where we'll all kind of work together to come up with the best solution there. And that covers my 5. Did I miss anything? No. Anything?
No, I mean, we put in the cover to the packet that, we will need direction from the council on a few of these items. And, one of these is Albany Park in terms of the pool and the level of pool improvements. And is it a 3-month pool, or does it extend into other seasons? Does it have a warm water pool? And we didn't want, again, when we discussed this, we didn't really want to go into the weeds tonight, but we just kind of want to flag that one of that we want to bring it back to the council to have council direction before we get into the weeds on the Albany Park improvements. And I guess the other thing is, I think the Post Committee would have liked to hear on some of the things that Julie mentioned, like trails. That hasn't been something that Post has been working on, but what's the temperature of the town council? I think everybody's very aware that we want to get direction from, feedback from the council. So that's really, in discussing kind of our approach tonight, we thought it was better to kind of hear from the council and have an opportunity for a discussion with the Post members. So I would offer that up. Is there anything else, Ryan?
The only other thing I think ultimately we'll need direction on, and Julie just mentioned it, is the idea of gifts and memorials and things. And once again, I don't think that tonight's discussion was meant to really provide all that direction. We intend to bring some of these items back to you all so we can kind of drill down on some of them. But just given, I think, probably the lengthy discussion that each one of them would take, tonight's probably a little much for that. But to have that on your radar, but certainly to get any initial reaction or feedback or any dialogue that you find might be important for a post.
And
Before I go to council, I just wanted to say one thing. I think that I do hear numerous individual items that could go a long time, and one thing, well, I'll just rattle it off. On the policy issues, like the giving, the donation policy, that seems like something that could be worked on and brought to us from staff, so we can kind of chop through those. But I think one of the things that came to my mind instantly was that I think that council's gonna have to get into the weeds with you guys, but I don't see it, I mean, we only got 10 minutes right now, but I see us, Auden or somebody had a great idea where we met with an applicant at a big table, and we were all at the table, and I think we need to have all of us there, as many as can come, have 90 minutes and actually plow through some of these things one at a time and get some real feedback. This is just the hardest way in the world to have a conversation. You couldn't think of a harder way if you spent your life. So I would like to see that happen, but also on some of the issues that may have popped into people's heads that we can throw out there right now, that would be great. So Gary, you go first.
Sure. Well, I would love to find a way to make it more collaborative between the council and Post. And so, because, I deal with this directly in the job I do for Picken County, and we are very collaborative with the BOCC. And so we get on work sessions with the BOCC to discuss specific topics when they need council direction or BOCC direction. So I think we've got to start picking away, prioritizing what comes, and I don't necessarily think a 90-minute session is the best idea, but, pick a topic and give an hour to it, and then have a work session on it with council, and give direction. You go back and you make it happen, or bring it back to final decision and funding. I just think we just need to prioritize it so we know what the list is. It's great that this is a list, but what's the priorities? And to get them scheduled for us to really discuss with Post and be able to then, give them better direction. Because I think, obviously not tonight, but there's a lot of things on here. I mean, I've been on council for a while, and I just don't feel like I've been that involved in a lot of these things, and I think that needs to be done. And I'll give you my direction on trails. We definitely, since we built those major connections, we really haven't been looking at trails all that much. I know I've talked to Julie about how do you get into the state wildlife area, and how do you connect the BLM, and all these things. And I think that should be a priority for Post, because it's a piece of Post. And we need to be, checking in with Picken County, Eagle County, BLM, Roaring Fork Outdoor Volunteers, Roaring Fork Mountain Bike Association, Mid-Valley Trails. I think you guys need to figure out ways to get together with them to see where town funding and assistance could be needed. So, that's mine.
I totally agree with Gary that some of these chunks could be given to us on a small plate, but I think that initial prioritizing meeting needs to be, I don't think you can prioritize without us, and I don't think we can prioritize without you. I think we need staff and all of us at the table to say, what are we gonna work, what's our most important, next important, because everything can't be the most important, or else nothing moves forward. So, Auden?
Yeah, well, first, thank you for your good work. It's important, and as we've said before, we want to have more meetings with you. What frustrates me about the process is it takes forever. And I'd love for you all to leave tonight with a little bit of direction on the order of, hey, I totally agree. I think the trails piece is really important. I think it's downtown, it's my alley conversation, but it's also connections among existing things and sidewalks, and to what extent we can use Post money for that, streetscape. So I would love it if we could get a sense of council tonight and just say, yeah, as you're moving forward, this is gonna be really important. And I think we could maybe provide a few other, areas of direction. So policies for donations, you've brought this up a lot. I know you brought us a proposal. I think it's worth saying, yes, let's get to work on that. And it may be that you need a policy that looks like some other town's policy, and then the proposal you brought to us before, which seemed like it was a specific, and maybe that you say, no, this is what we want, but we need to move forward with it. And I think we need to not, 8 weeks from now, have that initial meeting, and that's how things go. And then, in terms of, I also feel like we could give quick direction. My sense on Albany Park is, it doesn't need to be the greatest pool ever. It's pretty amazing. Let's keep it amazing, but we don't need to do massive improvements. And it dovetails a little bit with some of the other things we're gonna talk about tonight around energy. We're not trying to use a lot more energy in the community. That place is a gem. Let's make sure it doesn't fall apart and looks good. So I would love it if with, even just comment here, we can give them enough direction that your next meetings have something to do, and it's not gonna get ignored, and that it's gonna build toward a meeting when we can make approval process.
Okay, well, I will throw in as a point of agreement that I think that you can call them trails or sidewalks, and I, again, don't know exactly where this money can be expended, but I assume trails are sidewalks, sidewalks are trails, but connections, more like connections, and the signage to get people to places. And, it's something all of us who live here kind of take for granted, that we know where we're going. But, Auden brings this up a lot, that if you don't live here, you won't maybe find your way very easily. And there's, from my perspective, and this, again, may not be what we do at Post, but there are big chunks of dead ends on walkways, just dead ends. Okay, now I'm on a sidewalk, now I'm on a roundabout. Okay, that doesn't work very well. So those are things that either, Public Works or with maybe Post's thoughts, we need to address those, because that is just stupid to have sidewalks ending nowhere. So I'm in agreement with these two about connections and signage to those connections. So I don't know how other members feel about that, but I could get down with that one. Yes.
Thank you all for letting me join your meetings and have an intimate feeling of what you do in the meetings. And the brain power and the heart that you bring to them is pretty awesome. So I'm very grateful that you are a committee with the parks, open space, and trails. And I'm on board with you with the trails. One thing that I don't know if council is aware of, that the town of Basalt owns about 30 acres of land in the Hill District that abuts the state land, CPW area. This is an incredible parcel to have a multifunction trail system. It can be for trail running, hiking, biking, and this is a really big parcel that we own, that we could develop however we want, whenever we want. We need to be aware of the neighbors, but that's something that I want to build the psych on, because we don't have to get mired down with IGAs and other organizations. So I would like to see Post do more with the recreation development, partnerships, development, and a pitch to bring it to the partners, the Mountain Bike Association, the trails crews, et cetera, Roaring Fork Outdoor Leadership. I think that's something that is achievable. And if we get some very viable options, that's something that we can accomplish that won't be terribly challenging. I hope not. Another one is I do agree with Albany Park updating the bathrooms at the pool, the locker area, the trail around Albany Park, the gazebos. That's very viable. That's a great project. What the Ponderosa Park as well, that's very utilized heavily, and we should, especially with the unique habitat that's there, consolidate the trails, and that seems like something that we can do for a relatively reasonable amount of time. The Two Rivers Road Trail of the sidewalk, I'm definitely on board with that. I think that's great use. I think this is another conversation, but it's the elephant in the room no one's talking about, that I know that much of Post has a little bit of,
Ajita?
yeah, about is using, is for the gun range. And using Parks, Open Space, and Trails to fund as a placeholder for relocation and/or specifically funding for staffing to ensure that that is staffed. And so that's something that I would like council, if we could put our 2 cents in on that really briefly.
I don't know if you're almost through, but we, in order to give the last group from getting completely squeezed off the table, we need to wrap this up pretty quickly. I know it would be better to have a whole bunch of things that we all agreed on, but this is so much stuff. I guess the only other thing I would ask is that if there are policy issues that you would like us to see taken care of, I would like to see staff draft those policy issues, because they know what is real life to us, what we are likely to just like sail through. And citizen groups aren't, you're not paid to do that. So I would ask that if there are some policy issues, you could shovel off to staff to get it, we can get them cleaned up pretty quickly and have them done for you, because that's just how it has to go, is we adopt policy, so. But I also am really pleased to look out there and see a core group that have been here my whole life almost on this committee, and that we still get new people. Very, very happy about that, because we got a great group of diverse thinkers, and I love that. Thank you so much.
Madam Mayor?
Yeah.
Can I just say something quickly
Say
about
anything you
the
want.
range? Just as a quick clarification is the money, excuse me, the money that was contemplated in the post for 2022 for gun range improvements, whether that's purchasing new piece of land or doing improvements at the existing location, that wasn't meant for the staffing component of it. It was really meant for the capital improvement side of improving a range. There are grant funding opportunities through CPW, and in fact, Councilor Infante and I spoke today. There's perhaps some more money being released at the federal level for shooting range improvements. And one of the things that CPW requires is matching funds. And yes, we have a placeholder in there. No, we have not spoken with other partner agencies such as Eagle County or something along those lines yet. So because it's not an actual budgeted item, it definitely still needs some more massaging. And then I think it'll come into focus a little better with what this federal funding looks like and what those opportunities are. So it's definitely, a big sum of money. It was, came out of, this summer's fire, really, and trying to respond to, the community's input from what, we're dealing with at the range. And so that's kind of the why behind it. And the what is, we've got some more work to do to refine that dollar figure, so.
Okay, lastly, before we say our final goodbyes, I would like to know if there is any desire on the part of this council to have this meeting with you guys that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, then we will schedule that for as soon as possible. Let's say January. Even if we have to make it on a non-council meeting night, which would be better as far as I'm concerned, so we could malinger on these things until we're all happy.
January 2020. Just kidding.
A non-council meeting night?
I mean, I'm just saying, I've been saying, I would,
Or a work session, why don't we do it?
Yeah.
a work session?
If everybody can
Any
be
work
here.
session.
I mean, I was just gonna,
right, if everybody can be here. I mean, everybody can't be here on council meetings either. But anyway,
Yeah.
we are gonna move forward on that and try to get it early in the year. January would be my favorite, and we'll come back to that, so, thank you.
Thank you.
and we did
Hurry.
have one public comment, maybe, potentially.
We're not really taking public comment, we don't have time. Thanks, though. Okay, our next group is the Green Team. Sarah?
Thank you.
Boy, there's a million green teams in here.
Sarah and Mike, want to come up in the front row? Yeah, that'd be great, thanks. Okay. We're going to middle. All right, do you know I'm Sarah Dillney, town staff, and I also,
Hey,
with Susan.
Is this guy trying to scoot up to the table?
Yes.
I'm
yeah.
fine wherever.
Yeah, Mike, I'm sorry, Mike, that'd be great.
Actually, Sarah and Mike, why don't you just join us?
'Cause otherwise you don't
Yeah.
get on the mic.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's
Fantastic.
more awkward moving mics around. Although having Sarah and Sarah sit together is maybe.
That's fine. So I'll just introduce who's at the table beside myself. We have Green Team members and partners with us here today. We have Jerry Terwilliger, Amanda Poindexter. We have Sarah Gruen, who's representing CORE and a partner with us tonight, and also Mike Steiner of Holy Cross, who I just found out is also a town of Basalt resident. So, double danger there. So, just to remind you, the purpose of the Basalt Green Team is to advocate for a more resilient and sustainable basalt. The Greens team sponsors projects throughout Basalt that promote waste reduction, improve energy efficiency, decrease greenhouse gas emissions, and promote sustainability. In 2017, the town adopted the Climate Action Plan for an Eagle County community with the Basalt addendum, and for sake of brevity, I've listed them but won't go through. But those are the 6 initiatives that we are held accountable to. Data from Black Hills and Holy Cross Energy has informed the Green Team's actions as to where to be most effective. We found that buildings are the largest contributor to greenhouse gas emissions in our area, with vehicles being second. So just keep that in mind going through the rest of the presentation. Amanda is going to provide us some highlights from 2018 and what the Town of Basalt funding helped us to achieve there. And Jerry will be discussing the 2019 Green Team proposal.
All right.
All right,
We're
Amanda.
excited.
All right. Hello, everyone. So 2018 was a big year for us. We had adopted the revisions for the sustainable building regulations, which, kind of married the 2015 energy code with the existing regulations and also revamped them and kind of refined them. We held a couple open houses for the public to announce the changes and kind of get input and adopt those as necessary. And since implementation, we've put a couple projects through, through the new regulations, and also have held our zero energy ready trainings by Scott Mills. And, as we kind of go through and do some plan review and get some projects through the process, we definitely have some areas that needs fine tuning, and, an amendment will be coming your way soon. But also, we have interest from other municipalities of adopting what we have adopted, so that's pretty neat. We also did some improvements to the municipal buildings. So we did some air sealing, and here at the town hall and at the art base to improve energy efficiency and overall comfort. We also put the heat tape on timers and installed programmable thermostats. So kind of just doing the improvements here to then spread elsewhere.
Hey, Jackie,
Yeah, go ahead.
did we ever get I'm on the green team too.
I know.
You're a representative. Did we ever get the data on the savings from the blower door test and then the ceiling? Not yet?
Sarah?
We did it. We have, Sarah Nadolny has reached out to Black Hills Energy to better understand the actual energy usage, so we can compare the year previous to the current year. And we do have some information, but we don't have a full year of data yet. So right after this next winter, we'll have more information on the savings related to the air sealing and insulation that took place here, as well as at the art base and on the other projects that were performed.
And this is important because the premise is that when we invest this money, we're gonna make return on it. And this building and the other became much more comfortable. We know we're saving energy, but if we can demonstrate that, then this group has an easier time throwing more money.
It's
or-
possible that we turn the heat off. It's what it feels like to me, but anyway.
It's chilly out there. Well, Jared, if you want to introduce some highlights from the 2019 proposal.
Yeah, well, the way I see a lot of you dressed, maybe we're saving energy right now. You've all seen the budget, and there are a couple red line items that I'm going to save for last. Most of our projects are ongoing. For example, the waste management contribution, the compost, the leaf drop kind of thing. I'd like to point out, in particular, one of the ongoing things is the Habitat Basalt Vista project, where we're donating $10,000 each year for 3 years, and that is going to be an amazing project. There's going to be a lot of PVs out there, and we're going to be using electricity entirely, and so most of it will be clean energy. The REPP is something I should point out too. That's a Renewable Energy Purchase Program. That will add to your budget $10,000 for utilities, but what it means is you'll only be buying renewable energy. We're hoping that it will be local renewable energy, like if the Woody Creek PV system gets going. If not, it'll be coming probably from wind and solar from farther, wind and hydro from farther
What
away.
did you call that, Jerry?
Which?
That one you just are talking about that I can't see?
The REPP, I'm sorry.
RE.
Number 6 on the middle
Renewable
column.
Energy Purchase Program.
Oh,
Yeah,
got
Energy
it. Oh,
Purchase
I see.
Program. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Uh,
And Mike could answer any questions you have later on that as well.
Okay, great.
There are so that's B, but there are 3 items in the capital expenditures category. First is the electric car charger, where we're going to try and get a level 3 charger. We already have, apparently it's a level 1. Level 2 charger. I've been told it takes 4 hours to charge your electric car with a 2, but I've also been told a half an hour is all you will need of the level 3. And the only reason, or the best reason, for doing this is to give people incentive to buy electric cars. And since our electric is going to be clean energy, the next thing is municipal building energy upgrades. Some of them have already been done. And then the third item is Basalt Pool photovoltaics. That $30,000 you see listed there is the initial cost before rebates. And it's going to go on the bathhouse, not the portion of the pool buildings that Post is thinking of changing. And what I think is the best part about that is you'll actually have a 5% return on your investment. If anybody's following the stock market, that probably sounds pretty good.
Today.
And then there are membership dues, which add our voices to other people who are advocating for clean energy. Now, I want to go back to these red items, which were not in your initial budget. It's new to you tonight. Building improvements per assessment and big users assessment. And this was an idea brought up by Auden Schindler, actually, in our last
What a surprise.
What's the price?
Oh, no, I said, what a surprise.
What a surprise, yes. In our last Green Team meeting. And what it would do is assess buildings, find out ways to improve their energy performance, starting with the town hall. But then we'd like to partner with other people, people who have large energy consumptions in their buildings. And the second phase of that, the next step after that, would be to offer grants to make these improvements that the assessments suggest. And we'd team up, of course, with CORE, who's a fabulous partner, by the way. And if you have any questions, hopefully I'll get help answering them.
We have some exciting projects again planned for 2019. You know, we're looking to continue our work, the Green Team's work on achieving the goals and to remain in line with our commitment to the Eagle County Climate Action Plan, of course. And we feel that all of the projects that are being proposed are complementary to the 2019 strategic plan. So with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions or flesh out some details or get some direction from council.
I'll just turn it over to council for
I'll add color commentary. So on Thursday, Park City's Town Council is going to meet, and they're going to weigh whether they should up their net zero goal from 2050 to 2030. And they're going to do that because of the outrageous, dire science that we're seeing on climate. The recent Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report, and then the Trump administration's report that says we got a problem. The Trump administration report said that by the end of the century, the U.S. will be incurring $500 billion a year in damages from climate impacts. And all you have to do to understand that is look to California. So I've been advocating to this group that we need to step it up too. And you know, one of the challenges Park City faces is they don't know how to get there. Well, neither do we. But we're, you know, our goals are already ambitious. We're making a big statement. A couple of things we've done are really noteworthy, and the Green Team deserves praise for pushing these through. We changed our codes. That's the number one thing we can do. It's now consistent with the valley. It reduces energy use overall, and it, you know, it makes buildings more affordable for people ultimately down the line. That's huge. The money we've paid to support the Habitat Project is one of the most cutting-edge projects in the United States, because if, as a society, we're going to solve climate change, we have to electrify everything. That's something that isn't on the radar of the public. You got to go. This building needs to go from gas heat to electric heat and powered by renewable energy. So that is a major thing. So this small town that really has no money is able to make some big statements. I'm saying, look, we need to put in a little more money to do assessments of some of the big buildings, and then to work with those users. It could be the school, and help them assess what they need to do, and then kick in some money, get them to give some money, get CORE to give some money, and cut energy in the big users, because we're not the big users necessarily in this town. It's these larger buildings. So that's the request here. I don't know how it works budget-wise, if we can shoehorn this in, Ryan, the extra $50K we're asking for.
Well, tonight we're having our first reading on the budget, so there would be time, should council provide that direction, that we would be able to provide it before the second.
Okay.
Have you figured out who we're robbing to pay Peter?
No, well, I guess we'll get into that. But anyway, just, this is a modest, you know, this is a step up from what we've done. It's a modest proposal, but there's some good stuff here that, you know, an electric car charging station, a rapid charger, it's not that much, not big progress, but it's helping to build out the state infrastructure.
Right.
And we don't have one right now in Basalt.
Right.
So it's all good stuff.
Have you put your heads together about how we could possibly raise money to actually ramp this stuff up faster than just taking it out of the general fund when we don't have a funding stream coming in directed at that? Because that is how you get things done, as you say, this is a restricted fund, it's only for this, And as long as you don't have that, you're having to rob from some other piece of the town's work. And so I always think, you know, assessments on big users, that's what I was hoping you meant,
I'm there with you.
was assessments on big users or potentially a tax or a million different things. Brian, then Bill?
So I just wanted to mention that we do have some smaller pots of money that we can use that are restricted funds. That one of them is our REMP, which basically are impact fees for folks that are putting in, if I'm saying this wrong, but putting in big energy use
Exterior energy usage,
Like-
like a pool or
heated
a large
driveway.
spa.
heated driveways, things like that. So that's one source that we have, and then also we have a sort of cash in lieu option with our new building code regulations, that people, if they want to opt out of some of the improvements, they can pay a fee, and then we use that money for things like this. And so when we obviously knew this was coming, and so we did look toward the budget and possible sources for this, and so we can pull from some of those restricted sources to help pay for that $50,000
Well, it
ask.
sounds like they're restricted for this.
They are restricted for this type thing.
That would be no problem.
And so basically, correct me if I'm wrong, but we would be able to take the $50,000 completely and totally from the restricted funds.
Correct.
It draws down that fund balance to about
Just under 5,000.
under about
Right.
5,000.
What is that fund delineated for?
This,
This
For these
restricted-
kind of things.
But I mean, what's it called? What's
It's
it
called the rent fund.
Oh, the
yeah,
rent
yeah,
fund, I
yeah,
know the
yeah.
rent fund.
How long
Okay.
has it taken to achieve that balance?
Well, so this year, we anticipate taking in about $13,000 in REMP fees, and then wasn't it around 9,000, do I have that right?
Yeah,
In-
and the green initiatives.
In the green initiatives, that's the building fee offset. So it comes in not huge chunks, so we would be spending down, some of that, but our anticipated revenue for next year, is $7,000 in the REMP, fund, so, we'd bring that fund back up to about 12,000. And that's probably conservatively budgeted, but we feel comfortable with that.
So I still would ask that if you guys have any spare time, that you do help us do some research on what do other places do to raise money, because, I agree with Auden, this needs to be sped up, and it's just gonna be talk unless there's money there. So I'm tired of only talk without enough action. So help us think of that, because we don't spend a lot of time sitting in here. Auden may, yes, ma'am.
For me, I don't care who we have to rob, what account we have to rob. There's absolutely nothing more important than making this our absolute #1 priority. And for me, if you want more money because we need to do greater things, more things, I will 100% every single time support spending money towards this, because we are in a crisis, and if we don't do something what we should have done 20 years ago, there's no point in talking about anything other than this, in my opinion.
amen,
So-
sister.
Anytime, I will rob anything.
I forgot to circle back on Bill, I'm sorry, Bill.
It's okay. I am on board with what Katie said, and I think we need a full mindset change. I don't see that we're robbing from anyone. I see that others are robbing from the most important initiative that is facing our planet, our country, and our community. So if we don't get our heads around this, shame on us. I only observe that you're probably not asking for enough money. And where we get the money from, it doesn't have to come from general funds, frankly. There are REMP funds. I don't see any reason why we're carrying balances in any of these
No.
funds, frankly. And I also don't see why we're not tapping other restricted but more flexible funds, such as the Roaring Fork Club RETA. That RETA is incredibly flexible and can be used for a large variety of things that we haven't fully explored. I think we need to press the boundaries of some of our RETAs and see how we can dedicate them. I would love to see you guys, the investments in infrastructure, absolutely great. But if you could help lead us in the policy discourse so that we can then advance policies to us that you would like to see passed. We can take them to the county, to the state, and then see how we can affect much more profound change. So these can be energy policy, but I'd also suggest that the Green Team probably has a great role to play in some other environmental issues, notably water quality, water quantity, which are going to be deeply impacted by climate change. So considering that as a more integrated kind of event, I would suggest would be super valuable. And I guess my final request would be for CORE, you guys have done such a great job, but I can't tell you how crushing it was when we wanted to have a neighborhood solar utility up on the top of Ridge, and we were told we couldn't do it by Holy Cross. So if there's any way that you could influence Holy Cross to open that market for multi-family solar, that would be a tremendous revolution in how we can produce residential power that is renewable.
Okay. If there's not any dying moments, last words, I want to thank you all again for doing this. If you are interested in staying for the budget part of this, you may hear some of this again. If not, you'll hear it, read it in the paper or something. Yes.
I asked a quick question about the assessments, and I now understand that it's not an income generating, it's to provide a service. And is there redundancy in these assessments that are provided by CORE? Fill me in on that.
So CORE provides free energy walkthroughs for all businesses, and then for homeowners, we provide, as you know, the $100 assessment. The assessments that we are considering for Town Hall and for the other users are going to be a little bit more technical than what we provide. So it's going to be a more in-depth look at mechanical systems. So by way of example, we did, with a commercial energy manager, one of our staff members, Marty Treadway, did a walkthrough of these buildings and identified a lot of the work that the Green Team and Public Works has accomplished on these buildings. So the heat tape timers, the insulation and air sealing. But to look at it at just one step up takes more of an engineering level assessment. And so that's what this would pay for. CORE funds also can support that. So the funding that you provide will always be complemented by CORE funds.
Okay. And then in these commercial spaces, are there rebates?
Yes.
Okay, so that's just what I want to ensure, is that if we are providing assessments, that you have a carrot and a stick, but that there's lots of carrots. Yeah.
And we're hoping, it sounds like this will align really nicely with our programs, just to make it that much easier for businesses to move forward. So just put some additional money in the pot to drive these projects forward.
And this will be administered by the town of Basalt, by Sarah, or who's the staff? How does this get administered?
Well, the money will be administered through the town of Basalt, but then I think correct me if I'm wrong, but we'd reach out to a couple of the bigger users and try to see if they're interested in getting the assessment.
Exactly, I think that's where this has started, and there's definitely more details to flush out as we know if this is going to proceed. But that is the idea, is to identify who we believe in would be industry larger users and start there.
Okay.
So that would be town staff.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Okay, you guys, thank you. I hope we gave you a little idea. If not, Auden will be at your meetings, so.
Well, thanks for the encouragement, actually.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, you're doing God's work, for sure.
Another incubator.
Yeah, maybe. Okay, our next item is continue public hearing on Basalt River Park LLC application. And I will not read this whole thing unless I have to. What staff person is on this?
So, Madam Mayor, the idea, we are looking for a motion to continue to the December 11th meeting.
Okay.
If you recall from the last meeting, we had continued it to this evening because we had contemplated perhaps having a special meeting on December 5th. But after querying the council, I don't think that we'll be able to make that work. So December 11th is the final date, so that's when we'll talk about that.
Can I
I'll
get
make
a?
a motion
Thank you.
to continue to December 11th.
Second.
Do I have to say the whole thing out?
The title?
Continue the public hearing on the Basalt River Park application to December 11th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
One other quick statement, if I may, once you did good, thank you very much. I also just want to make sure, just getting on the record that at the next meeting, we intend to do the public input. So that would be the time where the public can come and comment on the plan and its changes to date.
Okey dokey,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, we are, what we've all been waiting for. Yes, exactly, again. First reading of ordinance 19 of 2018, notice of the town appropriating sums of money to the various funds and spending agencies in the amounts and for the purposes set forth below for the town of Basalt for the 2019 budget. Christy Hamrick.
Yes, wonderful. It's been a great process this year. Obviously, this was the first thing when I came on board to work with, and I believe that we've made a lot of progress in understanding our restricted funds and getting kind of a little bit more alignment with a new strategic plan that is yet to be adopted, but just looking forward at that, and the finance committee involvement since that time, and so a lot of good things have happened. So this ordinance is just pretty much explaining the general encumbrance of the funds by three categories, which is the operating expenditures, capital outlay, and debt service for each one of the funds. Pretty basic categories, and those are the requirements that we're going to be held responsible to, just not overspending for the next year. So there's two other resolutions that I'll be bringing forth for the next meeting, December 11th, which will include, number one, the mill levy, setting the mill levy rate, number one, and then the second one will be actually adopting the budget. So, and I've been working with Jeff and Ryan, and we're going to be working on the mill levy rates and making sure that we're getting all those in compliance over the next couple of days and get that to you for the next meeting.
Great,
So,
thank you.
Yep. The only exception I would say is that we will add the 50,000 in there in the restricted funding for the green team. That's the only thing that I know of as far as a change at this point in time in the budget. Everything else remains the same with the last version.
Good?
Bill?
Christie, would you just remind me, what is the discussion on the mill levy? Are we simply reaffirming the existing mill levies, or are we adjusting mill levies for the future?
That's a great question. Well, so what we're required to do for December is confirm with the counties our new mill levy rates for the ensuing budget year. So we're required to set those for the December 11th meeting. And so those are set in accordance to all of the approved, voter-approved questions, ballot questions for our bonds, and TABOR for our general operating.
Okay. So for instance, Basalt property tax is not going to change, but we will see changes in other mills that were voted 2 weeks ago.
Yes, correct.
Got it.
Yeah, I don't anticipate any major change.
Okay, could I ask a staff question? Would you mind walking us through any of the issues that may have changed, or that there were council questions about that were kind of hanging in the air, anything like that, before we as individuals
Sure, I think, Christie touched on a little bit that they're just, since the last discussion on, November, help me out, 17th?
13th?
13th, is that what it was? There haven't been, great changes in this
Okay.
budget. We did talk about, I think we vetted pretty well the, discretionary funding that, was always a discussion to get through for council. We talked about the park purchase, and, the merits of that and where the various funding sources for that. I think as far as operations go, that was fairly well set. The capital expenditures, I don't remember any
no
discussion
changes.
items on
Yeah, no
that.
changes.
So, yeah, anything else that I might be?
The only
Missing?
thing, that we added a few additions to the actual packet, in looking at, different recommendations or requests from council. One was a summary of all funds. We added some more fund balance information in here, and those kind of things. But, it's supplementary information, it's not change.
Mhm. And then, of course, we believe we received direction this evening for the Green Team's request. So that would be another change. And so if we get, I believe we had a general nod for
Seemed like it.
supporting that, yeah. So we'll make that change and bring that.
Yes.
Other people have specific issues you want to dig deeper on, or have questions that you need staff to give us prior to the end of the year? An adoption of the budget. Wow, this,
I don't have specific things, I do have some general things.
go ahead.
On the general things, Christy and I spent a good chunk of time on Monday going through the second draft of the budget, and there were very few changes in the third draft. But thus far, in our first review at the last council meeting, we focused very, very heavily on the expenditure side, which is sensible. What we haven't really focused on at all is, right? What we haven't focused on very much is the revenue side. And so, as town council, I think it is our responsibility to try to identify vulnerabilities and risks looking into the future. And most of those come up on the revenue side. So if we are looking at a stream of revenues that is largely sales tax dependent, if there is anything that disrupts that sales tax revenue, that stream, then we ourselves are vulnerable and at risk. So these were some of the questions that I posed to Christy, and coming out of our discussion, frankly, I'm very much comforted that she has budgeted very conservatively and it makes sense. But these are still questions that I think we as a council need to ask going forward. I also understand that the budget process this year was somewhat truncated because of some staffing changes. Christy came on board late, but I'd like to see us
Can I
be.
interrupt you just for a second? On that first item, are you going to circle back of, did you have ideas about that, or are you just pointing out to us that?
No, Christy and I talked about that quite a bit.
Well, and we were looking at, delving into that a little bit on the finance committee side
Right.
too,
Okay.
as well. That was really our next, what we were planning to do.
Because it would be great to have additional sources of income.
Sure.
Well, it's we're
And I don't see
anticipating, we're anticipating how the existing sources may diminish, either as a result of technical phenomena, the construction of a new city market down in Carbondale, or as a result of institutional phenomena like a general economic downturn.
Sure.
So there are things like that that we need to be conscious of. At present, our retail food sales tax revenue is more or less 20% of the aggregate budget. And if things change, we could really take a pretty big hit,
For sure.
easily in the $200,000 to $400,000 range, which will change our budget expenditures very considerably. The notion for budget balancing purposes of looking to building permits as a source of revenue to fill that hole doesn't really hold up in a general economic downturn, because people are going to build less, there will be less permit fees. So these are the kinds of things that I am concerned to look at much more deeply. And I would argue that this is the responsibility of the Finance Committee, is to look at these things more deeply and then bring it to the attention of the Town Council, as we're doing. But on the budget process side, we were in an unusual circumstance this year because Judy left, Christie came on a little bit late into the cycle, and so in October, we were presented with a draft budget that had some very, very significant line items that I think warrant much greater town council discussion before they appear in even a draft budget. And so I've discussed this with Ryan too, and will suggest that going forward, proposed expenditures above some threshold be discussed by council before they appear in a budget. And this wouldn't include recurrent expenditures, payments for staff, salary, wages, benefits, and things like that. That's not what I'm talking about. These are more the quasi-discretionary things. And then I guess the other big point that I raised with Christie that I want to raise here, the meeting tonight was the first time there has been any presentation in my 8 months on council from our budget beneficiaries. And I unfortunately think that that is a misappropriation of our responsibility. The budget beneficiaries should be presenting to us an accounting for the funds that they use in a much more regular way. And whether that's semi-annual or quarterly, I really don't care, but it can't go for an entire year where you're only looking back over 12 months and coming in to ask for money for the next 12. So those are my observations about the process that I would like us to work on for 2019.
Anybody else? Or is there a motion? Or is,
Public hearing?
oh, it
Should
doesn't
be-
say public hearing, but it might,
Not public hearing.
Okay.
It's not, the next time,
Second
the
reading.
final, yeah.
Okay, good.
Gotcha. And there's nobody here anyway.
Mayor, I move that town council approve ordinance number 19, series of 2018 on first reading and set the public hearing and second reading for December 11, 2018.
Well struck, Bud. Was there a second?
Second?
Okay. Further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
What's on
Wow.
the agenda for Finance Committee tomorrow?
I don't know.
Okay, I'm working from memory, so, we have, talking about the budget.
Yep.
We're gonna talk about the, what was,
update?
sales tax, thank you,
Starting the
Then-
procurement process for a new audit firm.
yeah.
We're talking about Finance Committee membership, and
Oh,
we
yeah.
will entertain candidates. And then we have December 12 agenda items, which is, again, talking about the agenda for the next Finance Committee meeting.
Okay, good, enough? If there's no further business, we're adjourned. Thank you, Christie.
Well, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Christie.
You just landed here at the perfect time in my life.